Thank y'all so much for joining us today. We're so excited to kick off day 3 of the How to Reboot Your Donor Retention series. So super excited for this conversation today. While everyone's kind of trickling in and just getting settled, let us know where you're joining from in the chat. I'd love to see, where people are all over and see where we're joining from. So to get us started, I just want to cover a few quick ground rules. First and foremost, feel free to put any of your questions in the chat. We want this to be conversational. We want this to be fun and engaging. So please feel free to put everything into the chat. If we're going throughout and there's something that spurs a thought or a way that you're currently doing things, we'd love to be able to up-level that and share that with other attendees as well. So feel free to put all that in the chat. We'll leave room at the end for Q&A, but just in case, don't feel like you have to wait till the end to get your questions answered as well. Second, the session will be recorded and the recap will be sent out tomorrow. So if you need to hop for any reason, you can definitely still get all of the insights and juicy goodies tomorrow as well in the recording. And thirdly, which is actually not on the slide, but there is a quick little survey that we have. It's a 1-minute survey. So if you look to the right-hand side at the very bottom button, that looks kind of like a little checklist. There's this 1-minute survey. If you enjoy the session, please let us know. We'd love to get your feedback. We're always looking to improve and learning how we can help you guys become better fundraisers as well. So and lastly, we are glad that you're here. We are so excited to kick off this conversation and taking time out of your busy schedule. So really excited to host this conversation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Allie Hammond. I'm our marketing manager here at Virtuous, and I am joined by these lovely people. If you guys want to quickly introduce yourselves, Jennifer, we'll just go down the line. I'll start with you. I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. Off to a great start today. So, it's just one of those things. Anyway, I am the executive director of development at CareNet, and I have been there for 10 years now, and we've been with Virtuous for 2 years. So really excited to get to be here today.
Eric, if you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good morning, good afternoon. I think this is morning for me. I'm out here coming from California. I'm Eric Tamales. I'm our director of business development, our chief evangelist for Virtuous. Long-time recovering fundraiser. I spent the last 25 years on the front lines, in the shoes, doing all of face-to-face fundraising. A little bit about my background. I made a little over 4,500 face-to-face solicitations in my career around the country, asking for worthwhile organizations. And now I have the opportunity of serving Virtuous and telling about the opportunity about how we can do things better inside of the system and efficiency here. And I'm excited to talk about moves management and all the things that transform giving.
And I'm last. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly. I'm a product trainer at Virtuous. I've been here for almost 2 years now. But prior to coming to Virtuous, I am also a fundraiser. So I love this conversation. I'm excited to get into it. I'm glad y'all are here.
I love it. Thank y'all so much. We are super excited to dive in. And we also look like we have somebody else here from CareNet as well, Central Texas. So that's awesome. Shout out. And some people joining from California. So we've got some people all over. That's awesome. But to kick us off, I just want to start off with, some people are familiar with Virtuous, some people are not. But I really just kind of want to dive into why we're gathered here today. And that is, why does generosity matter? And if you've seen some of the other, conversations, that has been the burning question that we have. And really, we're teaming up. Our entire team here at Virtuous is made up of nonprofit transplants, just similar to Eric and Molly's point. And so we're here to team up to address that a single issue, and that issue is generosity. So we believe that generosity truly has the power to create profound change in the world and in the hearts of our givers. So with that in mind, it's our mission to move the needle forward on global generosity by helping nonprofits, by helping you guys be able to connect with and inspire your givers. So super excited to dive in. We really do this through this methodology, which is called responsive fundraising. That is really the heart and soul behind everything that we do, behind our technology that powers the platform, behind our strategies, behind our thought processes. And really what that is being able to be able to give every single donor that major gift donor experience, regardless of where they're at in their own individual giving journey. So that's really here to set the tone for the conversation today as we dive in and get, uncover what does that really mean and what does that mean in terms of responsive moves management. And so I'll go ahead and stop sharing, but really want this to be conversational. But as we dive into our first question, I really want to just, hear from you guys. What does that mean to you? How do we hear, we want to give every single donor that major gift donor experience. What does that mean to you guys in that major gift mindset?
Jennifer, I was going to let you go first.
Oh, I can do that. Sorry, being polite. So for us, the moves management piece is really about understanding that a donor's giving level is not a static creature. They can move in and out of places. And so we have to create a really donor-centric experience that doesn't give the donor whiplash as they are interacting with us and moving through the seasons of their giving. And we do that by really kind of focusing on letting them know first and foremost that we want to serve them well by getting to know them better, and then using that as the jumping off point to let them get to know us better as well, and determining whether or not we really are worth the deeper investments because of that mutual alignment.
And I love that. I mean, that it's all about mutual alignment. And I think one of the cool things about what we get to do as fundraisers is we have this group of people over here that want to solve a problem. And we all have different problems in our nonprofits. And we have this group over here that is doing the work to solve the problems. And the idea of connecting the two groups together that's the philanthropy, that's fundraising. That's what we do on the day-to-day basis. And being able to take people down these journeys, utilizing the appropriate moves. And I think there's multiple ways. It's a buzzword, but it's also one of those ways that we can be able to, do internal management of our team. Are they doing the right connecting of the people? Are they connecting the right donor to the right project on our side? The other side is, are we as fundraisers, if we're going to do the individual contributor, are we moving the right amount of people through our portfolios, through our relationships, through our experiences? Are we stewarding and cultivating? And those are those different pieces there. There's a lot to unpack underneath moves management, as well as just through, relational currency, right? Like building relationships with our donors and having that deep connection of those two subsets.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so good. And and even to that point too, you guys kind of touched on, we think of moves management and we're like, okay, what really is moves management? Because, I think that's an important thing to touch on before we really dive into this conversation. Because I think a lot of times when we think of moves management, we think of really the top 10, 20% of our database, which ultimately we always want to have and get people, that is the goal, to get people to that state. And to become a major gift donor. But, there's a lot that happens before that. So I really just love to touch on what is that real meaning of moves management and that we're going to talk about today. If I'd love just to hear your thoughts.
So for me, it's about appropriately identifying folks. And once they are identified for interest and capacity and honestly, their desire to move, once we have those things identified, creating a ideal journey of how are they going to move forward? How are we going to prove ourselves that we're worth that increased investment and get them moved along the journey? And what are the pieces that we need to put into place to make sure that we can move them along in a way that makes sense for both of us?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think there's two pieces to it. And I love what you just said, Jen, too, is this idea I think moves management is multiple places, right? 25 years ago, when I started fundraising, it was easy. We would just spray and pray. And now we use that term a lot, right? We would just send a mass market message to everybody, the same thing that we wanted everybody to hear. It's coming up on Giving Tuesday, in a couple of weeks. So we're going to tell everybody in our database all about it. And it's not having to what you just said, Jen, having that personal journey. Right. And I think that's how we're going to be able to grow. And when you start taking a step backwards, I have the opportunity of serving the industry and looking at like the Giving Institute and the Fundraising Effectiveness Project and all these different data subsets. And like the spoiler is generosity is on the way down. People aren't not wanting to give to charity. Giving is down. People still want to wholeheartedly help others. But and I think the main reason why people are leaving and not supporting our organizations is the lack of that personalization. They're getting it from a Netflix. They're getting it from an Amazon. This Marriott that I'm sitting in, it says, "Welcome, Mr. Tamales," on that television over there. I'm in a hotel room right now. And so it's incredible to be able to have that personalization. And that's, to your point, Jen, is we can do personalization through moves management and doing the appropriate conversation with the right person. But how do we do that internally in our systems, right?
Exactly.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think even going into that point and diving in a little bit further, because you talk about personalization, and that's really at the heart of what responsive is. We want to be able to do that at scale. And so we're really going to focus on more of the entire database today, not necessarily just the top 10%, but really how can we steward people through a entire journey, regardless of where they're at. And so I really want to dive into a little bit more of that, starting off that the reason that everyone gives is so vastly different. What is personal to me and the reason that I give could be completely different than the reason that somebody else gives to the exact same organization. It could be that they know a loved one that has been affected by the same cause. It could be that I've personally been affected, or I've heard a very compelling story and I just relate to it, and I would love to be able to help make an impact. I'm very passionate about the actual mission. So there's a ton of different reasons. So I'd really love to dive in and, how, when we begin to think of moves management, how do you tell us a little bit more about how you would segment your database in order to be able to help, break it out to be able to start stewarding people more personally? Let's start there.
Do you want me to go, or you go?
Go ahead first, Eric.
No, I mean, I would think through, it's interesting. It's one of the reasons why I came to Virtuous and what I value is, 20 some years ago when I started, I was doing responsive fundraising and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And the key piece that you just talked about, Allie, to start off is, listening. That's the key thing. The Lord gave us 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. We need to listen twice as much as we speak to our donors, right? So that's the key thing: surveying, listening, what channel is appropriate, what's the appropriate project for our individual prospect, donor, volunteer, whatever that is. Sometimes they might be a non-financial ask, might be just customer nurture, right? But the other side is we want to take people and focus on that retention and take deeper and wider. So I think taking a step back and just surveying, and if people we have all these tools around us, right? People are clicking on links inside our email. So let's focus on what they're interested in, to your point, Jen, right? If they're only clicking on endowment stuff or campaign stuff or kid stuff, let's focus on those messaging to be able to start building out there. And then utilizing, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the behavioral data, the wealth data, the interest data, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. It's predictive modeling and just looking at lookalike donors and all these different places all around. And just the people are in our databases. They're in our systems, are in our communities, are in our buildings. We just need to be able to have that personal connection with them and build those lists off of that.
So to feed off what you're saying, Eric, which I completely agree with, we also know that we can go ahead and from the very point of acquisition, begin to know things about them by creating content. We do a lot of inbound marketing in CareNet, and we have a digital first philosophy. So we're going out and we're putting out these ebooks and other pieces of content that allow us to say, oh, that person's really interested in stuff that's developing fathers. donors, or these people like to support local efforts, or maybe they click on the link only when they see those magic words, matching challenge, or only when it's 100% of your gift is going to go towards this specific project. And so because of the way that they're required name acquisition as well as gifts, then you can already, like, from the get-go, start to have these pieces in place and then just tease that out as you go further down in the relationship.
So good. So good. I love that you guys do that. Do you guys break it up too? Do you like have that same type of communication when you're doing an ebook, you're communicating all the different pieces around it to like all the other different communities?
Yeah. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to throw out this content out on Facebook, and come and get your free ebook, your Advent ebook, your how to talk to people who don't agree with you, and on this issue, all those sorts of things. But then there's an after download ask that goes ahead and starts to ask, here are all the other things that this organization is into. Are you into it too? Why don't you come and give us the money and we can work together? And that's actually working pretty well for us.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Would you be able to, I know that you touched on it briefly too, to be able to, can you tell us a little bit more about how you're exactly segmenting out different, maybe how that differs based on the type of interaction that somebody is taking, and, what, at the point of, when they're acquired and the action that they took versus maybe somebody came in through, an event or something else. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you
Absolutely. So again, disclaimer, only been on Virtuous for 2 years. And so we're teasing into really what that means for us. But one of the things that we're really liking to do is we know that we have these 4 key strategic initiatives that we're involved in. And all of the giving kind of is circled around these philosophies and things that we're trying to accomplish. And so we're creating a tag system within the database. So we're going to be able to say, these are the people who really get stoked when you start talking about this. And when that giving shows up, they start lighting up like a Christmas tree. And we also have a really intensive new donor welcome stream where we're trying to get every new donor on the phone. So we've got a live person who's actually listening intently for, why did you choose to give today, versus the 3 months that you've been sitting on that email acquisition file, and what was it that really was just like, today is the day, and then being able to tag that so that, oh, hey, we've got another offer that's coming around because we're raising money for this new project. We're going to be able to pull that tag and say, we definitely need to be including these folks and talking to them about it very intensely.
Jen, I want to double click on that because I think that is like the coolest thing right there, is that like what you just said right there in that little bucket is like donor retention. What is your second gift strategy? What is your new donor welcome series? Those are steps, a part of this responsive moves management mindset of being able to like take people down their individual paths. And I think that's where we forget, right? Like we get the gift, we spend so much money. Like I forget what the cost of dollar raise is. It's like over $1. It's a lot, I know. And we spend so much money and time and operational business to be able to bring in a brand new donor. And then we just put them in our system and just walk away and focus on new people. But these people are inside our system, and we can have an appropriate management of our system. We can take people down individual personalized journeys. And I love what you said, thanking and asking and learning more about why they gave. And that's incredible. As long as it gets housed back into your system.
Exactly. Right. It's only as useful as if you can get it out again.
Right. Because when you win the
lottery, it doesn't exist.
Not actionable, not helpful.
Yeah. I love that. And I to your point too, Eric, and Jennifer, when we did a recent webinar with Next After, but we were discussing to the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and back in 2005, they said that they actually quoted that for every 100 new donors attained, that they lost 82 of that. was due to and so like being able to acquire new donors was actually like right there neck and neck with being able to lose and have the donor churn as well. So the cost to actually raise a new donor wasn't as it was a lot more higher than we thought.
There's this concept of like donor-centered fundraising. Penelope Burke created it, and the term and the concept around it. But there's three things to take away from it: is you need to acknowledge the contribution. The donor wants to know to be acknowledged. They want to know, did you have impact, and where did the impact show, and did you appreciate my gift? They want to know, did you get the gift, right? Like, did you get a contribution, whether it's offline or online? Those are the three critical areas, and you can put those directly into a new donor welcome series or a journey or a move management, whichever way you want to go. But I think those are the three critical starting points.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to double tap on that too, in terms of like the actual cultivation. Like, how do we actually retain the people that come into our database and move them through a journey and move them through this, getting them to different tiers and to different levels. And so one of the things too is like once we've started to segment out the database, people come to us for all different reasons. And I want to kind of touch on a little bit on, maybe somebody's come in and they've given a $50 gift, but they could also be a really good potential major gift donor. How exactly are you identifying those people and like maybe like even setting that criteria, or what are you guys looking at to maybe like segment out some of those people as well?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So one of the things that we do is, because we do have a lot of those $40, $50 donors who are just testing the water to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do they suddenly get the huge giant pile of stuff that says they just sold my information? There's those folks. There's also, was I thanked well? Do I feel like my $40 matters before I give the $40,000 gift? And so for us, because we have that intensive onboarding process for a new donor, we can already start to know some things. The lady who is making the calls for us, because it's a staff member, she knows these to listen for. Oh, that's my summer house, or I give to these other organizations. Or maybe it's I give to lots of folks, and then, but you guys really kind of sparked this, and I own a business, and here's the other thing. So there are these pieces that kind of get dropped in that can be throwaways unless you're listening for them. And so when that happens, then we can say, okay, we're going to tag this and we're going to come back to it and do some deeper searching. We also have Giving DNA that is integrated with the database, and which is a phenomenal tool, chef's kiss, because that also has some upgrade prospects that are sitting in there. So you can have the whole file go over and it'll tell you, hey, these guys have wealth and are giving philanthropically in other areas that you're not seeing. And so then we can take that export, bring it back into Virtuous and tag them appropriately, or use the export list as it is.
Love that. I think that's amazing. That's great. Eric, is there anything you want to add on that as well?
Yeah, I love that, Jen. The idea there is like, there's so many silos in our organizations, right? Like that's where my brain went when you were just walking through there, is like, even for the person from the front desk, I come from healthcare, philanthropy, where we did a lot of grateful patient. I had to get a lot of physicians on board, and just teaching our entire team around development, what philanthropy is and what the propensity to give is, and what those are key indicators that we want to look for. Is it the summer house? Are they driving a Volvo? Are they, what are the things that, are they coming to more volunteer events than normal? Right? Like all those things matter. And I think just getting everyone around the house to build that, another buzzword, culture of philanthropy, eternally, we can be able to break those silos to be able to move individuals down that personalized path. But I think I got to go back to is, to your point too, Jen, is like thanking appropriately, right? I mean, like my wife, it just happened in my household last week. My wife gave to an organization unbeknownst to me, and I got a thank you letter in the mail. It's addressed to Eric Tamales. It wasn't addressed to her. So it's already a red flag to her. It wasn't appropriate. She's not happy. They mailed me, even though she gave online, all those different channels matter to be appropriate, and we can do that in all of our systems that we have. So.
We also have an annual thankathon that our staff does, and we can, everybody on staff calls to, if we've got a phone number, anybody who gave in the last year. And so that's another good opportunity for us to kind of get that information. Adding spouses is one of the key intel pieces, to your point, Eric, so that we can know, oh, there's 2 people that we need to be messaging, or maybe there's a split household and we need to adjust the communication preferences because, you know, somebody isn't happy when their spouse gets that piece of mail or phone calls. So I think all of that is just helpful in when you're developing those sorts of relationships.
I'm going to go on a side tangent, Allie, for 1 second, just because I think it's a really cool idea that I used to be a big fan of Giving Tuesday. I used to be a huge fan because it's game changing for our industry and everything else. But it's turned into this, and Clay Bucket turned it a couple of years ago, nonprofit Hunger Games, where it's just all of us fighting against each other, and it's our own echo chamber. And I know we need to get out there and do it. And so I'm back and forth on the concept. But last year I support a couple of organizations in Pittsburgh, my hometown, and this student called me in the afternoon. And she said, hey, I'm not going to ask you for money, but I want to let you know that your impact mattered. And it was from the program side and from her side of point of view. And she just called me for 10 minutes just to say thank you. And what did I do? I went online and gave, I think we can just turn the needle a little bit and going back and just giving thanks on Giving Tuesday. It's my little side, I'm getting off my soapbox, but I just think it's so critical just to thank appropriately in a timely manner.
To your point, Eric, one of the things that we do is we just give content and have the after download ask. So if you want the free content, great. Thank you. Here you go. You can walk away and you're off the hook. But because we had diminishing returns on the Giving Tuesday anyway. There's a lot of folks who honestly, I think at the local level who just are able to leverage Giving Tuesday better. And that's just not our jam. But I think your Hunger Games quote,
Claybuck, my buddy. He's the one who came
I am writing that down and putting it on my wall.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. But no, I think that's such a good point. I mean, being able, every time we reach out to donors, it does not have to be an ask. There is so much power in gratitude and saying thank you and really understanding how their gift is actually making an impact. Because I think a lot of times as a personal donor myself, when I make a gift, that's really what I want to see. Is I want to see the change. I want to see the value and the difference that I'm making, and being able to understand that and being able to have, that coupled with gratitude, I think makes a huge difference and would just empower someone to want to give again.
From the right person too. Think about it. From the CEO, these people are giving these 50, to your point earlier too, Jen, the people are testing the water, they're giving $50 and, they may have huge wealth capacity, but they don't want to be thanked by me. They better should be thanked by our CEO or our executive director or another board member, because these people have potential to be a board prospect or a major donor or whatever it might be. And in that situation, on Giving Tuesday, I got a phone call from a kid going through the program. And I think that's the most critical for me. And that was for my heart. So finding the right person to be able to do from that voice.
Well, and thanking often. I think I heard a thing that's the average donor needs to hear thank you 7 times before they choose to give again. And when you're talking about the longer giving cycle that's typically in major gifts, you have time. You have time to thank them those 7 times and say, thank you so much. Every time you send an email, thank you, thank you. There's 2. And so... And it's also naivete to assume that they've seen every single piece of communication that you've given them. So you have to say it repeatedly because they may miss 6 of the 7 times you tried.
There's a lot of noise out there, and we need to be personal and intentful. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And real quick, I see a question from Kelly. Will you touch on just a little bit more about your thankathon? Is it typically before the end of the year, or when do you typically do that?
Start the day after Thanksgiving, run until the first, like the very last week of before Christmas, so that we can get it crammed in there, and we've got a dialer that we use that helps speed us up, and we can drop a voicemail when we reach a voicemail. But otherwise, if we get a live person, they get a live person on the phone, which is like critical for us. It just speeds us up and gives us those opportunities for those one-on-one relationships, which is what the phone is really powerful for. But that also means that we've got all of that in before the December 31st deadline, don't we?
Yep. Which is big. So I love that. I think that's amazing. I think that's a great campaign to run. Kind of even going off of that too, like given that that's one of the campaigns that you run, but even speaking a little bit more broadly too, is, we're talking about cultivation and stewardship and moving people through a experience. So I'm curious how you guys are leveraging, you talked about using voicemails and phone and email, and like curious how you guys are leveraging multi-channel along with automation really to help steward these relationships, and maybe what that looks like for different types of donors based off of where they're at in their journey.
That's a great question, Allie, because multi-channel perspective is one of the things that we value very highly, because we know that people, walk that mail piece to the computer, and what are they going to see on the website, knowing that they're not going to click all of the links that I've been sending them in email. So making sure that we've got all of the channels aligned and are providing the same message is really important. And to some extent, that transfers over into the major gifts realm. They get all of the major donors on our file get a versioned letter on our newsletter, and they are getting that same communication. So it's still appropriate when I'm sending out that e-newsletter and these other things, because they will also give me email addresses that I didn't know actually belonged to a major donor. And so to make sure, because they always do exactly what I want them to do, right? They want to make my job easy. That's what it's all about. But if we're very intentional about making sure that those messages are aligned, that the newsletter that they got is going to speak to the case for support that they're going to get at the end of the year, then so when they go to the website and they say, oh, right, I remember reading about that matching challenge that's going on and I'm not participating in, but I was going to give anyway. But all the messaging is still aligned, because we know that this is where we're just going for the general unrestricted fund, or we're going to hammer in on some project that is, fatherhood projects around Father's Day, etc.
Jen, that's so good. That's so good. There's so many things to unpack there that I love about it, is just getting out there and just appreciating and going that direction. So that's fantastic, because I think at the end of the day, I think we're doing more with less. So we have to be able to figure out ways to do it. And the other piece of the pie around it is, multi-channel is the way to go. We need to communicate in all there. I kind of joked about it, but there's a lot of noise, right? An average person gets about 500 emails on a daily basis, right? And we have to decipher around what's the most important. And maybe we saw your messaging, maybe we didn't. Not 90% of the times we probably didn't, because we're focused on other things, and we're not ungenerous. We're just busy. We want to support our organizations, and we want to figure out that noise. And the other side I'll share is just how many of us have changed email addresses in the last 6 months or a year or whatever it is. And so us as fundraisers, it takes us so long. If you have an AOL address, I'm sorry. But I mean, like all these different pieces that are out there, like we're changing our email address so we don't know if we're getting to the right person. But on the reverse, how many of us have changed our cell phone number in the last 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, right? So there's a huge open rate you're seeing on text messaging right now, that everyone's opening an email or a text message. No one's listening to no one's answering the phone to an uncharted number, right? But they'll listen to voicemail and they'll read the transcript, to your point, Jen, and the email is over here. So like all those different channels matter. And what I would also say too is, we spend so much time and effort in marketing, in our building out our annual fund or our annual report. Like, who reads that? To be honest, we spend so much time in pushing that out there in January or July or whatever it is. To your point, Jen, why don't we piece it out? And now we have 12 different quality conversations inside our annual report to be able to put across all those different channels. And the newsflash is all those different pieces are moves within this mindset that we're trying to build out. They all matter in all different ways, whether it's the right person in the right household, whatever it might be.
Well,
Sorry.
plotting out where you're going. No, it's great. Where you're plotting where you're going to go for the year well in advance so that everybody's got time to line up their parts is, I think, really critical, especially when you're going to start having those in-person donor visits or other pieces. They know what I'm doing so that if they have to catch it on the fly because that major donor just got moved onto their account because I got an automation running who is identifying throughout the year who's now meeting criteria and adding them ad hoc onto caseloads, they know what went in the mail. They know what they can talk about, and because maybe they didn't get pulled out of my mail stream before they've got to have that visit.
Yep. So, and I see a couple questions in the chat too. I'm going to jump onto that, Allie. Some of the things that I just talking, I mean, monthly donors and sustaining donors or recurring donors, whatever you want to call it, are the critical. They're the backbone of the giving programs to our systems. And they do want to be thanked. They do want to be appreciated. We can't treat them like a water bill. You can't treat them like DirecTV or your annual, like whatever it might be. They want to have that personal connection. So utilizing the multi-channel approach, I used to do video. I would have, when I was managing my youth-based program organization, I had 15 kids interviewed on a video, and I'd have all my monthly donors get a separate video on a monthly basis, and I had 3 extras just in case they wanted to go above and beyond for like different campaigns or whatever it might be. But having that opportunity to be able to do more than just a receipt and acknowledgement and having that personalization one-to-one. The major piece is about being thanked with a paper receipt. I think the other thing I love doing with our gift officers, doing a Post-it note on top of a letter. Like we can have a form letter created, but then the Post-it note comes from our gift officers, and front desk can put that on anywhere, right? Like it's just, yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kristen, for answering those questions. I see you working in there. Appreciate you.
I love that thread. I want to stick to this. I know we are kind of coming up on time here too, so I want to make sure. But there's one thing I want to touch on, and that is really that before we get to the major donor portion, there is that whole mid-level giving part, and I'm curious, just from y'all's experience, how would just could you give an example or maybe just speak from your own personal experience of how you would consider even moving someone, or maybe like moving someone from the mid-level giving to a major gift, and what that journey looks like for someone?
I'll go ahead and start. So for us, we've got these folks who have qualified to be a mid-major, right? And they've been giving that way a lot, but not all of them are engaging with the major gift officer who's responsible for cultivating and growing their giving. So at that point, if they've just out of the blue dropped a gift that qualifies them now for a major donor, a true major donor, and there has been no communication that landed with them. They've been sending emails and they've been going out into the void. Then it's easy to just say, okay, well, now let's go ahead and switch senders. And now the new account manager can do that. But if there's relationship that person likes that gift officer and now they're giving more, there may need to be a new conversation about maybe they need to stay just a little bit longer on that mid-major caseload so that we can continue to have those deeper conversations that have already started.
I think it's funny too, Allie. I have this conversation with a group of friends of mine in our industry where I feel like every time we do a presentation for a nonprofit industry session, it's kind of required that we have to put a donor pyramid in here. And we did not do a donor pyramid. So I just want to put that asterisk in there, because the conversation we always have is, what does the donor pyramid actually look like today? We know what it looked like 25 years ago. And how do you take that $100 donor to the mid-level donor to the $25,000 donor? And you just can't take a $100 donor to a 25, right? So I always called it like a donor sombrero. Like we always forgot about the middle. There's a group of people now that we're talking, it's more like a high rise where it's a very like thin and like, because you look at the FEP and all the different stuff that's out there. But it's like, it's all about the cultivation. It's all about the relationships. It's everything Jennifer's talking about. And it's just taking people from just building those relationships and working in the subsets, because not everybody's going to go down the right path and not everyone's going to go down the same path. So it's just having the right connections with the right project, the right person, the right time, all the rights that we've all heard before, to be able to grow generosity.
And I don't know if you have experienced the same thing, Eric, but we also have donors who give windfall gifts. So they'll qualify for a season because they got an inheritance or they sold a business or these other lifetime events that may never replicate. And so, but do I want them to feel terrible once they can no longer give at that level again? No, I do not. I want them to still feel valued in that. So I think that's why it's really important to bring that desire to serve every donor as though they were my only donor. It's just philosophically across the board to the database.
100% agree with that, because I think we need to, that's the core concept, right? You said, you kind of hit the double clicked on it earlier, where it's like everyone's testing, and we want to build those relationships. So we want to treat everybody like a major donor. They all matter. It's, it is about the revenue. I'm not going to get on a soapbox today, but it's like, I don't like looking at year over year budgets. That's a whole other situation, because that's why we focus on major gift versus focus on the relationship of those $10 and $20 donors. But when someone does have that windfall opportunity, whatever happens in their life, that's a one-time gift, but that recurring sustaining donor still matters. And they want to be appreciated and taken to that next step.
And there's also estate plans, aren't there? So
the estate matures.
If you treat them well, that is absolutely a planned giving opportunity.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like watering a plant, right? I mean, it's like if you have what you water and what you pay attention to and what you nurture grows. And I think that is true for any relationship regardless. And I think that is so important when we talk about, just building relationships. That's really what the heart of booth management is building a deeper and more personalized relationship. And sometimes that ask always isn't an ask too. Like you said, if they have to, maybe they can't give that same amount of gift, or maybe it's a one-time thing, or they want to volunteer instead. But I think even like being able to suggest the right next step at the right time too matters so much. And I absolutely would love to touch on more there.
Well, I'll say too, Allie, to that point right there is like, I remember when I was, in all transparency, I created a mid-level giving program 25 years ago, turned into a business and sold it off to a larger agency. So I've been doing mid-level giving for a long time. And so I had a board member when I was pitching this idea back in 2001. And he said to me, he's like, Eric, what happens with those people, to your point, Allie, who didn't give, in that spot? They matter. To me, I thought it was a failure because I wanted 100% close rate. I wanted the, revenue for our organization to grow and focus on our education programming and everything else. But we had about 40% of people say no to that gift at that moment. And Mike Long, my board member, sat down. He's like, listen, they're learning about our organization. They're learning more. They're going deeper. They're building a relationship. They're not going to give today. But to your point, Jen, they're going to do a planned gift. They're going to get engaged. They're going to come more involved later on. They're going to give later. And that was 25 years ago. Now the organization is thriving. And so I think how we respond to those people who say no matter, and how we nurture and build. It's just a no right now.
Well, a bless and release from the ask, I think is really important. I understand not now. You're still good in my book. You've already done good. So I'm just asking if you want to partner again, where we are.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, a relationship is a two-way street. So, I mean, if you have a donor that's giving consistently and say for some reason, something happens and, they either lose a job or a job change and they're not able to give that one, you're saying, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? We notice that you haven't given. Is there any way that we can step in and help in some way? And as a donor, being able to say, wow, like this organization truly cares about me. Like this, I matter. And I think that that's a big thing when it comes to like having that relationship, is that it's that two-way street. So it's not always just an ask and a donation ask.
Well, it's a real privilege to work where I do, because we get to, we're a religious org. So we get to say, oh my gosh, that is difficult. Can I pray for you right now? And so being able to connect with them on that, relationship standpoint is big for us.
I love that. I love that. Well, I do want to leave room I could go on this conversation all day. I think this is so much fun. But I want to pass it over to Molly because we do one thing that we touched on today is that automation and multi-channel and like segmentation, all of that plays a major role in terms of having a moves management and having responsive moves management. So what does it look like to have all of your pieces kind of working together for you to be able to help steward people regardless of where they are? And a big place of doing that at scale is through the use of automation. And so I want to pass it over to Molly, who's going to showcase what that looks like and just kind of give an example of what it means to have a responsive moves management executed within a platform.
Yeah, thank you, Allie. This has been a great conversation. I know I'm kind of lurking in the background, but I think I've already learned a lot.
We love that you're lurking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this common theme that I've been hearing is thanking early and often. It's a relationship, so it's not transactional. If I say no, if I say not now, it's not like, I'm cut off. And I think that automation can really improve these processes and potentially take some of the burden off of, me keeping track of these things, me keeping track of who hasn't been contacted or who hasn't been thanked. How can we have a tool to do it? Still personalized, still responsive, but off of, my plate so I can focus on the actual relationship itself. There's a variety of things, right? We've talked about a lot of them. We've talked about segmentation. We've talked about multi-channel, about kind of wealth insights, wealth screening. How can we bring that really in one place? So I want to show, if I can figure out how to share my screen, just a couple of examples using automation, using some tools that are in Virtuous. This first one is, the idea is just thanking early. Everyone gets a touch point, regardless of their size of gift. Everyone gets a thank you, right? How do we thank our major donors versus our mid-level donors versus our smaller gifts? Maybe a little bit different, maybe through different channels, but ultimately they're all getting sort of that immediate recognition, thank you, right? And even within this, having a couple of different routes of communication. We've heard average of 500 emails per day. I don't get 500 emails per day, thank goodness, but I get a lot. It's a lot of noise, right? And so sure, we can use emails. Absolutely. We love it. But also, can we use text messages? Can we communicate additionally? Can we say thank you 7 times? Maybe not all in one day, maybe not all immediately, but over the course, of the next month or something to really engage those low-level donors that we care about. And something that is in here is appending wealth data. So maybe, this is that big donor potentially, but they're new. They don't know you all that well. They don't know your organization. They give a $10 or $15 gift, but they're capable of a lot more. How can we know that? By appending wealth data. And then from there, they're still getting those touch points and moving them potentially into more of a qualification and identification kind of thought process. Is this person interested? Do they qualify for, a portfolio, a caseload, a more significant relationship with someone on our team? And how so, right? So this may be something that you all already do to a certain degree, but it's just difficult to manage, or it's not necessarily all in one place. So how can we have Virtuous and the workflow kind of move this person through identifying them, setting some of their routes within the move management circle, I guess. But still, it is personal. This is on me to decide, is this person in my caseload? Is this a mid-level donor? It is ultimately on me. And so it's still the relationship. It's still personal. It's not necessarily like this robot talking to, my big donors that I want to steward, but it's just taking some of those sort of day-to-day little tasks off of my plate, right? And I think I have one more over in here. This is the idea behind this specific workflow is folks who are, they're in my caseload or they're in a mid-level caseload and they haven't been contacted in 90 days. I'm not necessarily making an ask. I'm not necessarily sending a thank you. I'm just checking in. This is, how can I pray for you? This is, how are you doing? This is, how's your family, right? It's not it's not transactional because it's a relationship. And so again, this is just me or someone on my team calling to say, how are you doing? I care about you. Let's chat. So then in the future, when I do make that ask, it's not just once a year out of the blue when, we need money, when we're looking at the budget. It's because you care about me, because you care about my organization and my mission. We've built this relationship. Then I feel more comfortable making that ask there. So these are just a couple of examples of some moves management automations. I do think there's lots of tools within Virtuous, within the workflow themselves, but it doesn't have to be this, this fear, this kind of robotic like marketing over and over. It can still be that the personalization, that responsiveness, just with the robot, with the workflow, taking some of the burden off of you. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much, Molly. I think that's great. It's just good to be able to see that and what that looks like, and help being able to just facilitate some new ideas and maybe some new workflows that we can be able to put in place. And while I do want to say that what this is in Virtuous, you're able to do these on your own as well with different tools and things like that. So you're able to have, maybe like an email marketing. The one thing I always say though is that when we look at these and, leveraging multi-channel is always crawl, walk, run. Start with where you are. Don't feel like you have to get to the end of the race, today. But just by adding one extra step into a different channel and diversifying your communications, and just kind of starting where you're at. So I love that. If we have any questions too, I want to open it up for Q&A. But Molly, you touched on a really good point too. And while we wait for some questions or anything like that from people, if you want to see anything in Virtuous or, have a question about specific workflows, I really want to touch on Jennifer and Eric. I'm going to kind of put you in the spot here, but you touched on automation and how it alleviates some of those tasks internally for your team and like some of those mundane, just day-to-day tasks that you have to do. And I'm curious, where specifically, Jennifer, where, how automation helps your team internally being able to, whether save time or what does that look like for you guys on the back end too?
So for us, qualifying the mid-major and major donors and then knowing which major donors are kind of lapsing out of those giving tiers is really important. And we found that we were spending a lot of time pulling reports and then doing the calculation. Did they give, last fiscal year, 2 fiscal years ago? Was it at the right level? And we were able, with the help of our consultant, to put together this monster automation. But it's been really, really helpful that identifies every night anybody who's hit the thresholds and then assigns tasks to the new account manager, gets all of those account managers kind of lined up, tags them as newly added to that account manager's caseload so that they can pull a report based specifically on the new additions who were added since the last time the caseloads were evaluated. And now it's not our team having to go in and manually setting those tasks anymore, manually moving them, manually setting those fields and getting them added to the new universes and getting, the account manager to follow their accounts so that shows up in the tasks. And all of those are little things that were nice to have when we were trying to do it manually. But now that that's all automated, it makes it so that we can have those leveraged the very next day after they've hit those thresholds. And we can pull them out of direct response right away so we can get to that as quickly as possible. And it means that, if they pulled the data tomorrow, we don't have to have a huge communication string back and forth about make sure you suppress this person because they just got added to my caseload. And so all of those things are things that, but prior to Virtuous, we were like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice? And now we can do it, which is fantastic. And we did that without adding a staff person. I keep saying Virtuous automations are my new staff member and they work 24/7 and it's fantastic. It's a great life.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, I think that that's so important too. It's where it's not taking that human element out of fundraising, but really helping you become more human in your communications, which is awesome.
We've got a big philosophy for less menial work, more meaningful work.
Yes, I love that. I'm taking that. I see some questions too. It's where Kelly asked, how do you utilize well-screened tools in Virtuous? And then another question about personalized dynamic custom gift asks. Both great questions. Molly, would you be able to showcase that and see what that looks like?
Absolutely. So to start with wealth data, wealth screening, there's a few ways, but in this first example, this is kind of a continuously run workflow. Anytime there's a gift, one of the first actions is screening for wealth data, because again, maybe they give a $10 gift, but they're capable of giving significantly more. So we have that information. Our donor is capable of giving significantly more. What do we do with it now? And that's when this kind of secondary workflow potentially would come into place, where we're looking for, they've been screened for their wealth, they have a certain rating. Now let's qualify which group are they going to be in, which caseload, which portfolio. So that's really the purpose of these queries. We're looking for things in these queries and in these workflows of potentially gift amount or potentially their rating. So using that wealth screening to push them into a mid-level, to push them into a major, or just another category, essentially. So that's one way to use the wealth screening tools. The second question was about dynamic gift arrays, which I love. I love that. I love talking about gift arrays. And I have it pulled up. So we, in our giving forms in Virtuous, you are able to set sort of a standard gift array, $20, $40, $60, $80. You can absolutely do that. But by using, by using our smart giving arrays, here's the button, it is the responsive listener is able to, if it's a recognized donor, able to recognize their average gift amount and customize those giving arrays based off of their average gift amount. And so it'll look, we can modify this, but this is sort of the default for what that would look like. I typically give around $50. So that will be an option. We're not going to put something crazy like $1,000 as my first giving array option, but we're going to push me beyond. As a donor, we're going to push me to give a little bit more. It is an option. I can do that. But also, how can we kind of encourage a slightly bigger gift each time, a slightly bigger gift, a slightly bigger gift. We're still, making it relative to that donor. We're not pricing them out or kind of lowballing them with a giving array online, but pushing them to be more generous.
I love that. Yeah, the gift arrays are a great way to leverage and really optimize the donations on your donation page. And really help, whether you're a major gift donor or somebody who's giving, just your recurring giving, or just like being able to give your second gift. That looks different for everyone. It really helps being able to encourage. So like if I gave $50, like Molly said, I wouldn't get that $1,000 gift ask amount if previously I hadn't given that. So it's a really cool little tool to be able to leverage on your donation page as well. Let's see. Does Smart Gift Arrays take into account if the donor is a monthly donor?
Not exactly. I mean, their monthly gift, whatever it is, would contribute to their average gift amount, but it's really using that statistic of their average gift amount to push in as option one. Good question.
Yeah, great question. Okay, well, I know that we're at time too, so I want to make sure. But thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We're so excited that you're here. Jennifer, thank you so much. I know you're a little under the weather, so thank you so much for bearing with us and hanging in there. So it was great to share your experience. So thank you so much. And Eric, I know you're out in California, so joining us. And Molly, thank you so much for taking the time to showcase the platform. But thank you, everyone. I know it's a busy time for you guys. This recording will be sent out. We do have a workflow that you're able to set up regardless of what technology that you're using to be able to help segment and be able to kind of help build your own workflow with fillable templates and a step-by-step guide. So I'll be sending that out after as well. But feel free to reach out with any questions if you have. And please join us tomorrow for the end of year with Gabe Cooper, who is our CEO. He's going to be covering a lot more and diving into the responsive framework and what that means for your organization specifically. So join us tomorrow. But thank you guys so much, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all.